Today, we're going to go over how to use some tools through Patrick Bradley to help free up our financials. And I just want to give a little background on how we got to now, and then we'll connect to Mr. Bradley's presentation. So I'm with UW-Stout Manufacturing Outreach Center. I kind of head up the webinar area, but ultimately our goal is to deliver services and help small manufacturers get wherever you guys need to go. And a big part of how or why we do that is to generate economic impacts. So all of us are here, exist basically to help you manufacturers out. And one of the ways that we help you guys out, our parent organization, WCMP, does a manufacturing report. And if you haven't seen it, there's a link here that'll take you to it. There's 2 of them. And part of that finding, the marketplace, told us that automation was very important. And as part of that, budgeting is a big obstacle, along with finding technology is an obstacle, and training is an obstacle. Those are all things that we exist to help you folks with. And hopefully over the course of several webinars, we'll tackle those. But today we're going to try to figure out how can we hit on the budgeting and financing to help you guys out. So these were 2 quotes that were taken from the conclusions of those reports. Back in 21, it said that you guys were all focused on investing in the future. And there's a big shift kind of between 2 groups, one group that is investing for the future and one that's treading water, as it were. And then this year, the survey results came back that those of you who are investing more, because it's a real solution to your workforce difficulty, and it's not just investing in the future, it's focused on systems, technology, and automation. So along those lines, let's figure out how we can do that. So part of the idea of this conversational forum is to bring all of us together to figure out how we can help solve these challenges together. And if you guys in the chat can just take a minute to share your name, the company, and what you would do if you freed up some cash. We can all read those comments. And I am going to stop sharing and let Patrick take over.
Let's see. Okay. All right. So you can see my Ron, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay.
So I
All
see
right.
just looking at the comments quick, that Mr. Oliver wants to grow his business. Somebody else wanted to invest in automation. Brittany Hoffman, Schmidt Prototypes, wants to upgrade outdated equipment. So I encourage all of you to kind of take advantage of the chat. As we go through the presentation, feel free to raise your hand and then ask questions as we're going through it. Make sure you're comfortable with the information, that it makes sense before we move on. And then if you do have questions, we should have time at the end to answer those questions. And even after the formal presentation's complete, we'll probably have a few minutes to answer any specific questions that people don't want recorded as part of the file that's shared after the event. So with that, take it away, Patrick.
Okay, well, Ron, thanks very much for the invitation to be here today. So just to set the record straight, I am not a professional presenter. I'm not a professional speaker. I'm just a guy who has a passion for numbers and manufacturing. And what I hope you get out of this today is some good information that you can use right away to have a better understanding of your own financial statements and the story that your financials want to tell you. And as Ron mentioned, as we're going through our time together, if you have any questions or if I'm not making something clear, please raise your hand and let me know. So with that, and I am also not a professional Zoom guy, so here we go. So today, I want to make sure that I am crystal clear. We are not going to be talking about accounting. And to prove that point, I want to share a little story with you. So when I was 18 years old and getting ready to graduate from high school, my aspirations were to get a degree in accounting and go to law school. So I go to UW-Madison and I start down the accounting path and I take the 100 level, 200 level courses. And then I run into a class called cost accounting. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but that's the weed out class. And I really had a tough time. I was really struggling, just wasn't getting through my noggin. And after an exam, I don't recall how poorly I did on the exam, but it was bad enough where I waited for all 100 of my classmates to leave the lecture hall. And I went up to the professor and I said, "Professor, do you really think I have a future in accounting?" And he looked at my grade on my exam and he came up to me and he put his arm around me and he said, "Well, Mr. Bradley, let's talk about some of your other interests. So if I can get this, you can get this." So what this is about today is really allowing you to have a better understanding of your own financial statements and play the great game of business even better than you're playing it today. Some of you may know the story of this picture. Coach Vince Lombardi in the early 60s, the Green Bay Packers lost the NFL championship game to the Philadelphia Eagles. And at the start of training camp the next fall, he gathered his players in a classroom type setting, and they were pretty eager to hear some new plays and new strategies that Coach Vince Lombardi had for him. And he starts the session, he holds up a football and he says, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And Paul Horning's in the back of the classroom and he says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, slow down, coach, you're going too fast." I wish there was a recording of this because I'd love to see what Vince Lombardi's reaction was to Mr. Horning. So one of the reasons why that is one of the most popular sports quotes, "Gentlemen, this is a football," is because it stresses fundamentals. And Lombardi was known for going over the fundamentals over and over and over. And that's one of the reasons why he is credited of being such a great coach and why the Packers had such a great experience in the 60s. Now, who is on your team? Well, basically, it's going to be anybody that's making decisions that are going to impact your cash and your profits. So what we're going to go over today is you are going to learn the 7 most critical fundamentals of your business. You're going to have new capabilities to measure your progress and how to keep score. And you're going to feel even more excited and confident about the great game of business in your company. So we're going to talk about a manufacturing company. The owners are Jack and Jill. They do 10 million in revenue. The value is 3.5 million, and they've got some debt. Their long-term goal is to get their value to 8 million, and their short-term goal is to increase their cash flow. Their manufacturing outreach center project managers are encouraging them to invest in automation and technology and upgrade some equipment. And they have a goal of trying to find $300,000 so that they can do this. So we're going to take a look at two approaches. Jack's approach is to pay attention to the P&L statement. So we can see, let me get my cheaters on here. So Jack says, well, revenue's going up, our gross margins are increasing, our operating profit is increasing, our net profit increasing, business is great. So let's just put it in the budget for next year and keep doing what we're doing. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Jack's financial statement assessment. Jill, on the other hand, she heard from her MOC project manager that there was a webinar given by some guy named Patrick, and she could have a better understanding of what her financial statements were telling her. And she walked away with three things. Number one, how to keep score, this concept of a power of one, lather, rinse, repeat. So let's dig deeper into what each one of these are. How to keep score. So Alan Miltz is my cash flow guru, my cash flow mentor. And in every one of his presentations, speeches, white papers, he gives this quote. And as far as how to keep score, it's a real simple formula. It's the movement or the change of cash in all of your bank accounts. So in this case, with this particular company, when we look from one period to the next, so let's put a date on this. So if we looked from 2021 to 2022, we had, I should say, the beginning of 2022 to the end of 2022, we had no change in our cash. We paid down our current or short-term debt by 125, or long-term debt did not change. So our net cash flow is $125,000. That is the score of this business for last year. And our job is to try to improve on that. So if there's one takeaway from our time together today, I want it to be this: how to keep score. It's not measured by revenue. It's not measured by profit. It's measured by your cash flow, your net cash flow. Second takeaway that Jill came with is this concept of the power of one. And I like this, or I liken it to the rules of the game. And these are the 7 most critical fundamental rules of your game in the great game of business. And what we want to look at is, what is the impact of a 1% improvement and a 1-day improvement? And then we calculate the impact on cash flow. So for this particular company, if they were to increase their prices by 1%, that's going to improve their cash flow by $79,000. If they increase their volume by 1%, it's going to increase their cash flow by roughly $18,000. Now, it's kind of interesting to know or to be aware of the relationship between these two. So there is approximately a 4-to-1 ratio between a price increase and a volume increase. So if we just use round numbers, if the price increase is 80,000 and the volume increase is 20,000, there's a 4-to-1 ratio there. The reason why I stress this is because, have you ever heard somebody say, well, if we were to drop our prices, we could sell more? Well, with this particular company, as an example, if there's a 4-to-1 ratio, if they decreased their prices by, say, 5%, they would have to sell 20% more just to stay even. So that's pretty interesting to know what that relationship is. And then if we reduced our cost of goods sold 1% or our overheads, you can see the improvement on cash flow. And if we calculate our receivable days and our inventory days and our payable days. Now, here's what I mean by that. The receivable days, that's just a formula to tell us how many days does it take us to collect our receivables. The inventory days, there's a formula to determine how many days is your inventory staying on your floor. In your payable days, how many days are you allowing payables? So this technology that we're using is able to calculate that. Now, it's nice to know, as an example, on the receivable days. So if a 1-day improvement in collecting your receivables means that you're going to have 27,000 more cash in the bank, it's helpful to know what your receivable days are. So again, there's a formula out there. We can calculate, here's your inventory days. So this shows over the last 3 years. So your inventory days went from 59 to 78 over these 3 periods. The receivable days, for the last 2 periods, it increased. So Ron, I want you to remember inventory days, the change from the last 2 years from 67 to 78, that's how many days? 11 days. And then receivable days, the change from 68 to 76 is 8 days. So Ron, I need you to remember those 2 numbers, okay? And then on our payable days, so we can see, we're somewhere between 80 and 90 days where we are paying our vendors. So there's a formula out there to calculate your working capital days. These are the number of days that you are out of pocket. You are financing your working capital days. And in this example, it's going in the wrong direction. Going from, call it 40 days to 70 days, that means you are financing more days of capital that's not in your bank account. So one thing that we take a look at is what I encourage my clients to do is to let's take a look at. Let me back up here for a second here. So what we do is we have a conversation to say, well, where can we make some improvements here? And let's just take the kind of the low-hanging fruit. So we've got our inventory days and our receivable days. And then when it comes to our gross margin, so our cost of goods is decreasing, which means our margins are increasing. So let's pay attention to those 3 variables. So we take a look at the cost of goods reduction. So we had, for the last 2 years, we had an improvement of 1.2%. And then Ron, on the receivable days, what was that number?
8 days.
Okay, so we gave up 8 days on the receivables, and on the inventory, that number was
11 days.
Ron, you are on the ball. Thank you. So now let's have a conversation to say, okay, what kind of improvement can we make here? So let's say on the cost of goods, we're going to try to get another 1% reduction. On the receivable days, what can we do to get those 8 days back? And the same thing on the inventory days. So we'll have a conversation about what kind of action or what kind of decisions can we make to decrease our receivable days and decrease our inventory days. And then we're also going to assign who owns that to make sure that somebody is going to be accountable. And then our technology here is going to calculate if in fact we can reduce our cost of goods sold by 1%, that's going to improve our cash flow by 61,000. If we do capture our 8 receivable days, a little over 200,000 improvement to cash flow. If we get back our 11 days, that's another 188,000. So we have added net cash flow of $468,000. That is in addition to the $125,000 that we calculated earlier. So the third takeaway that Jill had was this rinse, lather, repeat. And we have this color code green scoreboard, and there's 3 basic sections. We've got our profit measures, or working capital measures, and your score, your net cash flow. So we analyze the 3 years of financial statements, and we come up with an ideal profile. So we see, ideally, we're going to put a flag in the sand. We want to have a gross margin of 41%, overheads at 28%, operating profit at 13%, and then you can see the working capital days that we calculate. And on a quarterly basis, we want to have a net cash flow of $125,000. Then we post a prior, then we also come up with a color code parameters. So green is good, yellow average, red is bad. And then we're going to post what were the results over the last 2 years. So let's just pretend we're starting the year in 2022. So we take a look at what is our green, yellow, red numbers for the last 2 years. And then every quarter, starting in 2022, we are going to measure our progress. So in the first quarter, we can see what happened with the margins. Well, the margins went up a little bit, overheads improved a little bit, operating profit improved, our accounts receivable days, improved a little bit from 2021. We're struggling with our inventory days. Our account payable days, we're paying a little bit sooner. So we have our working capital days of 75. Again, it's increasing. It's going in the wrong direction. And our net cash flow for that particular quarter was a negative $50,000. Not sustainable. Take a look at the second quarter. Our margins stayed the same, overheads the same, operating profit the same, receivable, we made a little improvement on collecting, still struggling with our inventory days. Account payable days stayed roughly the same, and but our net cash flow improved to a positive 50,000. So the rinse, the lather, repeat is every quarter to be taking a look at our numbers and measuring our net cash flow at the end of the day. So we can see over the course of 2022, we had a net cash flow improvement of approximately $600,000. So there is where this company is able to find the money to make the investments in their automation and technology and upgrading some of their equipment. So if you would like to know what is the impact in your business of a 1% improvement or a 1-day improvement in these critical fundamentals, what I would offer to you is, if you send either to me or to Ron these 6 figures, I will prepare a free report to you. And then if you would like, we can get on a Zoom call and go over that report so that you have a very clear understanding of these factors. And I will also give you the formula so that you can calculate what your, it's nice to know what the dollar value of a receivable day is, but it's also meaningful to know what are your receivable days and what you can do to make the improvement. So I charge a fee for this type of work. If we were to engage in to do these quarterly assessments, so it's a 12-month engagement, the fee is either $3,000 up front plus 10% of the net cash flow uplift, a maximum of 24 grand, or 3 installments or a one-time payment up front. And I also offer, if you would like to have a 20-page analysis of your business over the last 3 years, plus a 45 to 60-minute assessment with me, that's a $900 engagement. And we would have an agreement, a non-compete. I don't know who your other advisors are, but I'm going to just stay focused on giving you the information that is pertinent to this cash flow assessment, and a non-disclosure. Obviously confidentiality is obviously important. So that's the end of the presentation, and I would certainly open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Patrick. Walking through the details and trying to take all of those numbers and boil it down through the power of one into something that's kind of more manageable for those of us who are always busy trying to get stuff done. At the end of the day, the business does have to make money, and we do need that money to help us grow where we want to go. So definitely curious if anybody out there has some questions. So while you guys are thinking about that, so Patrick, just curious. So a lot of businesses we've talked in the past don't always spend as much time. I always joke kind of that sometimes it feels like, as you brought up, they look at it, and then as long as nobody's complaining, they're focused on running their business. But is there a cost of inaction? Like, how much money typically can somebody who starts focusing on these top line or top business metrics, how much money can they typically free up if they start doing that?
That's a great question. Thank you. So what I have calculated is, so Ron, you used the term, the cost of inaction. So the COI, the cost of inaction, is the new ROI, return on investment. And I wanted to put a number to this. And so I went back through a number of projects that I had worked on. And what I calculated was that the cost of inaction, so the cost of just continuing to do business as normal, can be calculated with a real simple formula. Now, I'm speaking in generalities, but in general, if you take your revenue number, so for this particular company, if we have a $10 million company, in general, just multiply that by 2%. So a $10 million revenue company times 2% is $200,000. I'm confident to say to you, Ron, if this was your company, you're doing $10 million in annual revenue, I'm confident, I'm not guaranteeing, but I'm confident to say, if we were to go through this engagement over a 12-month period of time, you would realize approximately $200,000 more cash in your bank account at the end of our engagement. So, and that's a pretty conservative number. We have a mutual client that went through this process, and for them, their cash flow uplift was closer to 3%. So I'm comfortable in publicly saying 2% would be a reasonable expectation.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So yeah, just for some of you, on average, kind of the going rate for a stock cobot cell that can either tend to machine or tend to CNC or even do welding, they're around 100,000, give or take. The capital expense maybe 80. By the time you install it, train, and get it running, you say around 100. That 2% is potentially paying for you to have 2 new pieces of equipment, 2 new robots that could take the place of people that you can find. And they're always to work on time. They never call in sick. Lots of opportunity.
I heard a interesting term in talking to a gentleman a couple weeks ago. It was lights out manufacturing. So these robots can just keep going 24/7. Turn the lights out and they keep going.
So anybody in the audience, what do you think of that? Would that be helpful? Looking at financials in this way and making a scorecard?
I'll chime in, Ron. Just coming in out of industry. My name's Bob. I'm with the MOC as well, but having gone through the price increase cycle, just throwing it out there for the group, starting to see some loosening on that with supply chains and everything else getting back into the swing of things. So I know for a couple of years here, it's been, very low on-time delivery. So it's kind of hard to go in for a price increase. But as people, start to get more on-time delivery and can show their past performance is indicative of their future success. If there was a time to go for price increases, now is a good time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. Well, we'll hang on for a few more minutes. Anybody has questions or wants to chat more about what running an analysis like this might look like? And just want to thank you all for attending and remind you that we are running these every month. Next March on the 14th, we'll be focusing more on the technology part. What is the process and what are some of the new tools or the new automation trends that are coming up, and how as a small manufacturer can we help identify the right solutions to fit your business? And I hope to see you there. If you're following up on the things today, hopefully when we find the technology, we'll be in a place that that you can help fund it. So thank you. And I'll be stopping the recording right now.